Have a blast with these 25 Atari 8-bit run-and-gun games for your 400 Mini, coming up next. The Atari 8-bit computers received their share of early 80s action games where you play a lone soldier or adventurer running through corridors, outdoors, buildings, caves, or rooms in order to blast everything in sight and sometimes accomplish a task or two. After 1985, the flood of ports slowed down a bit, being replaced with a smattering of licensed games and an abundance of budget clones from the UK and mainland Europe. The library also has been supplanted in the last 20 years with a nice collection of homebrew creations and uncovered, unreleased gems to satisfy almost any Atari 8-bit gamer. In this collection, you will find 25 of my favorite run-and-gun style games from well over 75 or so that I found in my deep dive into the library. Some of these I had when I was 14, and some are very new to me. I have left out a few genres and games that might fit in this list, so I can concentrate on those in further deep dives. You won't find many games on this list that contain just a little bit of shooting and a lot of adventure. You also won't find any spaceship or vehicle style shooters in this collection. What follows are 25 contests in the Gauntlet, Commando, Berserk and Robotron styles, as well as some unique and cloned platform games that contain enough shooting to offset the exploration and adventure elements they might contain. There will most certainly be a second video of run-and-gun games, and some games like Hero that should fit on this list were covered in previous videos. The Atari 8-bit library is extensive and very fun to explore, so let's start with a 1992 reworking of a classic 1983 Atari 800 game from the Program Exchange. Aliens 1992 Futura. I was going to have the John Pavlich classic Dandy, which was the inspiration for the arcade game Gauntlet, on this list, but found this 1992 Futura release, Alien, created with the original Dandy as a unique gem and a must-play. Berzerk 1983 Atari. For some reason, Atari never officially released this well-crafted Berzerk port for the Atari 8-bit computers, but it did come out for similar hardware in the 5200 and can be found on the Atari 400 Mini's built-in game list.
Again, fight like a robot. Intruder alert, intruder alert.
Captain Beeble 1983 In Home. Captain Beeble is not 100% a run-and-shoot game, but it represents the best of early efforts on the Atari 8-bits at adding minor tasks and adventure elements to what could have been a simple side-scrolling blaster. Commando 1989, Atari. This 99% complete unreleased port of the Capcom classic is a joy to play. The blasting is fun, fluid, and fast, and is in my top 10 arcade ports for the Atari 8-bits. Dark Chambers, Atari, 1988. In 1987, US Gold and Mindscape released the official port of Gauntlet for the Atari 8-bits. And not to be outdone by them, Atari ported its forebear, Dandy, reimagined as Dark Chambers for all of its cartridge-based systems. In my opinion, this is a better crafted game than the official Gauntlet port. Druid 1987 Firebird. The Atari 8-bit received some good later years ports of C64 classics, and while Druid, a 1987 Firebird release, might at first glance appear to be a more colorful version of Gauntlet or Dark Chambers, the gameplay is much more diverse with more spells and adventure in the mix. Druidarium 2018 by KK. On the heels of Druid, we have this 2018 masterpiece of running, blasting, and adventure, Druidarium by KK, that seemingly uses a side view of the Firebird Druid character to create one of the best blasters you'll find on the Atari 8-bits or any other 8-bit system. Gauntlet 1987 US Gold and Mindscape. The official Gauntlet port for the Atari 8-bits, released in 1987, was actually quite a surprise to research. While some Atari 8-bit fans were disappointed with this port, Bob Armour did all he could with the time and budget he was given to make a good playable port of a later year's Atari Games arcade machine, which was quite a rarity for the Atari 8-bits when it was released. Hobgoblin 2008 by Great or GR8. Sadly, most of the best later years arcade ports, such as Ghost and Goblins, didn't make it to the Atari 8-bit, and although there were some budget attempts at this game, Hobgoblin, a homebrew by GR8, released in 2008, does justice to the arcade and the Atari 8-bit while retaining all the difficulty of the source material. While I had the Activision Classic Hero in the Essential Platformers list, its best clone, 1987's action arcade romp In Too Deep, takes the hero formula and amps the shooting up enough to be added to this list. While there is probably more saving and exploring than shooting, I wanted it here. Hey, it's my video, I can do what I want. I forgot I wrote that. Into the Eagle's Nest, 1988, Atari. In 88, Atari released this Pandora-created, Gauntlet-inspired game as an XEGS cartridge. I find Into the Eagle's Nest to be closer to a spiritual inspiration for id's Wolfenstein 3D than the Apple II Castle Wolfenstein, a much more cerebral game ported to the Atari 8-bits in 1982. K-razy Shootout, 1981, CBS. When we had our Atari 8-bit in 1984, K-razy Shootout, released first by K-Byte and later by CBS, was our version of Berserk, as the planned Atari 400-800 arcade port never materialized. This is a fun take on the arcade machine with a few unique elements such as a countdown bonus bar and comical original animations. King Tut's Tomb, Antic, 1985. The released version of the Tutankhamun arcade machine for the Atari 8-bits will be in another video, but this 1985 Antic released clone, King Tut's Tomb, looks and plays better than the official version. I did find a problem with this version though, and it's probably just user error, as I can't obtain one of the keys to exit the first level. Kowalski's Fury 2018 Agenda. This platform shooting adventure blaster homebrew, where you are tasked with battling human-animal hybrids, is quite enjoyable and stylistic. I don't know if the hero namesake is a reference to the badass mofo that Clint Eastwood played in the movie Gran Torino, but I certainly hope it is. Lord of the Orb 1983 Antic. At first glance, Lord of the Orb, a classic game released by Antic magazine in 1985, might be mistaken as a vertical Tutankhamun clone, but the action, gameplay, and adventure are far more diverse than that arcade title, especially because you can shoot in more than two directions, but also the limited ammo nature of the game adds more strategy than just simple blasting alone. Los Angeles SWAT 1988 Mastertronic. While this Mastertronic title might not have the best story or deepest gameplay, it certainly has the running and blasting where it counts. It hit the same gaming thirst spot in the 8-bits library that the unreleased Commando clone would have, but at a budget price. Mission Shark 1991 Zeppelin. There is a lot of blasting and adventure to be found in 1991's Mission Shark, which to me is probably the best of the bunch of Polish and Czech later years LK Avalon action adventure titles imported to the UK as budget Atari 8-bit Zeppelin game releases. Phantom 1987 Tynesoft. While I was originally compelled to place Tynesoft's 1987 Phantom in the upcoming video on maze-based action arcade games, I wanted to make sure to give it a highlight spot on this list also, not just because of the ghost and ghoul blasting, but because of the very unique addition of the scare meter represented by a heart rate monitor that tracks the sheer terror as well as the isotope level affecting your player. Plan B, 2012, Fandel, Miker, and PG. Some people dislike the high-resolution mode of the Atari 8-bit for games, but I disagree, and find it a perfect method to port games such as Plan B, a 1987 game released for the BBC Micro, as a 2012 homebrew for the Atari 8-bits. It's a great deal of fun to play, with crisp, clear visuals, and a wonderful mixture of adventure and platform blasting. Psyclotron, 1985, Eclec Tech. This unreleased gem by Atari programmer Jeff Milhorn, who also did the Sinistar arcade port, should be held up as one of the ultimate classics of Atari 8-bit gaming, but this is the first time I've even played it. Possibly I'm in the minority, and everyone also knows about this Robotron-style blaster where you need to seemingly save a brain from bad ideas, collect good ideas, and blast everything else, but I'm certainly happy to have found it now. Robotron 2084, 1983, Atari. Like Donkey Kong, the 1983 Robotron arcade classic conversion to the Atari 8-bits is a fan favorite, and like the 5200 version, can be played with dual sticks in a coupler or on your Atari 400 Mini with our modern controller and two thumbsticks mapped to create the best home Robotron console experience this side of the Atari 7800. R.O.T.O. 1985 Analog. R.O.T.O. may look like a hero clone, but this magazine-published gem is more about blasting, exploring, and collecting fuel cells than about rescuing lost miners. Like most analog games, it's challenging and very well crafted, especially for a magazine game. Shamus, 1982, Synapse. In what is quite possibly the best all-time room-based shooter on the Atari 8-bits, the 1982 Synapse release Shamus asks the intrepid player to explore and blast their way through multiple 32-room levels looking for the exit and the answer to the mystery of Shadow's lair. Space Dungeon, 1982, Atari. Space Dungeon is a homebrew cartridge code conversion of the Atari 5200 classic R.O.T.O twin-stick room-based shooter that amps the graphics, blasting, and exploring up to high levels of entertainment. Trax Demo Version 2022 Shanty 77. In 2022, Shanty 77 created this demo version of Trax, obviously inspired by Amiga and ST classic Chaos Engine, and it blew Atari 8-bit fans' minds. Seen here is that playable demo. Shanty is currently working on expanding and releasing a new playable version for what will be an outstanding release. He also has been testing this game engine on other genres for the Atari 8-bit computers. I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. Wow, now that was fun. There are quite a few more that I can add to a second video, and I'm always looking for more, so please send me your favorites so I can make sure to cover all the best Atari 8-bit has to offer. Until next time, have fun running and gunning and blasting your way through your favorite games in the vertical blank.
Explored 8-bit worlds, pixels crashed onto a digital shore. All our records were scratched, left alone we were latchkey children, terrified of nuclear war. In the glow of the cathode ray, every game we play on our 2600 into the